Come one, come all. I've got 20 theory crafted decks, 2 for each class, ready for you to play on day 1 of the new expansion for Madness at the Darkmoon Faire. I'm your host, Funky Monki, an off-meta deck builder, and I have theory crafted 20 brand new decks ready to play for you guys on day 1 of Madness at the Darkmoon Faire. 2 for each class. And if you have a particular class that you're really excited to see, I have provided timestamps down below in the description, so feel free to jump around to whatever class you would like to see. So without further ado, let's get into them. Alright, so first up, we got Druid, and the first deck by Druid is going to be a Strengthened Numbers N'Zoth Big Druid. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I was super excited to go ahead and play with N'Zoth, and he naturally fits into Druid, where we have a lot of different kind of tribes. So we have the brand new Fizzy Elemental, we also have Claw Machine, which acts as a mech, and we also get Strongmen. So as we play these big dudes, we can go ahead and play a free 6/6 as well. So in the early game, our goal is basically just to ramp up to our big stuff as quickly as possible, and then we just start slamming big dude after big dude, and then we win. Now, just single minions usually isn't enough here, so we got a late game bomb with N'Zoth to go ahead and make a huge board with everything that has died, and we also have Ysera to trickle in some of those big dragons as well. Another great card that helps us get past the early game is Lunar Eclipse. So as we're about to ramp, we can go ahead and kill a small minion with Lunar Eclipse in the same turn, since it discounts the ramp right afterwards. And the second theory crafted Druid deck that I have for you guys is going to use another old god, but Cthulhu. This one is going to be a Quest Druid with a Cthulhu finisher. So Cthulhu was great in Druid because Quest Druid just draws so fast with, you know, Wrath, Rising Winds, Nourishes, so we can find all of our pieces very quickly, and Druid can utilize the pieces from Cthulhu very well. It's actually not a drawback, but almost a benefit to the deck, because all of these pieces are 5 mana, so we can go ahead and utilize things like Anubisat Defender and Steel Beetle. And one thing with Druid is Druid kind of lacks board clears, but with some of these pieces, and in addition to the new Eclipse cards, we can go ahead and get some pretty heavy removal. Some of the Cthulhu pieces are deal 3 damage to everything, or deal 7 damage split up, but if we combine that with a Solar Eclipse, we can go ahead and deal 6 damage to the entire board, or 14 damage split up. But even if we don't want to use the Eclipses with the Cthulhu pieces, we can get some crazy value. Like, just imagine go ahead and doubling up a Hidden Oasis for a couple 6/6s, and basically healing yourself up to full health. The next up for the classes, we have Hunter, and this particular Hunter deck is going to be a Secret Hunter. We have just some insane secret synergies from this latest expansion. We have Inconspicuous Rider, which not only thins our deck of a secret, but plays a body at the same time. We also have Mystery Winner to go ahead and discover whatever secret we need. We also have another great secret, Open the Cages, which can be very aggressive. Now, with all these new secrets that we have and all the different ways to get them into play, we have another new card which is absolutely bonkers, and that's Petting Zoo. So for 3 mana, it starts as a 3/3, which is just not bad, but any other secret that is in play just makes this card absolutely busted. If you have 1 secret, you get a 3 mana 6/6. If you have up to 3 secrets, you get a 3 mana 12/12. That's insane stats. Another amazing support card for this archetype is going to be Rinling's Rifle. Kind of like Mystery Winner, you get to discover the secret, so depending on the matchup, you get to go ahead and play the best secret possible. If you're against like a stealth aggro rogue, pick an explosive trap. If you're against a priest, maybe pick a pressure plate or something. So it's just so versatile. Now, this next Hunter deck is going to be a spicy one, and it's going to be a big death rattle Hunter. So this deck is really cool because it utilizes the new Jewel of N'Zoth and the Darkmoon Tonk. This late game is just an absolute powerhouse. Not only do you get a bunch of big minions, but these minions can do quite a lot of face damage, either by attacking or by their death rattles. Or if we're behind on board and we want to go ahead and regain board presence, we have a couple of broomsticks, which are absolutely insane with the Darkmoon Tonk and the Jewel of N'Zoth as well. So for just 1 mana, you can go ahead and trade the Tonk into something, trigger its death rattle, or you can go ahead and rush everything with the Jewel Resurrected and clear the board, maybe trigger some death rattles, push some more face damage at the same time. So you can get some huge swing turns in Hunter, which previously was kind of hard before. And of course, we have the Rinling's Rifle again. This card is just so versatile. You can just discover whatever secret you need for whatever situation or whatever matchup that you're in. All right, so the next class I got up for you guys is going to be a Shaman, specifically a Quest Evolve Shaman. Now, what makes this deck possible is the new Cage Match Custodian. As soon as I saw this card revealed, I instantly thought of Evolve Shaman because we have a reliable way of tutoring our Bogspine Knuckles. Bogspine Knuckles is one of the best cards in this deck, if not the best, and just provides some insane swing turns, and you can guarantee it now. So with the Quest Shaman, you get a lot of value with all your battle cries, but typically it was kind of a little bit slower tempo because these battle cry minions have lower stats. Well, you can go ahead and transform these guys into bigger dudes to kind of negate that drawback. And another tool that we got that helps with this is Revolve. So all your little small battle cries, you can go ahead and change them into potentially just decent minions. And another thing is Revolve affects all minions. So if you want to go ahead and potentially like silence an opponent's minion, like if they have a big Edwin, you can go ahead and revolve that and go ahead and benefit your own board as well. Some potentially broken turns you can do with this is on turn 4, you can play a Desert Hare and then revolve, so you can get three costed minions, or you can even do this on turn 2 with a Lightning Bloom. A couple of other newer cards that we got that help this archetype out, we got the Pitmaster, which summons multiple things that help out with like Revolve or your Bogspine Knuckles. We also have the Derailed Coaster. So if you have the Bogspine Knuckles equipped and then you play Derailed Coaster, you get a board full of all these little 1-costed dudes, which then all evolve into random 2-costed dudes, and that creates quite a sizable board by itself. And in a deck like this, we're mostly running minions anyways, so you can usually fill up your board pretty easily with the coaster. One cool thing about this Cage Match Custodian too is that we're basically always going to have Bogspine Knuckles in our hand or in play. So this makes Dread Corsair a whole lot more consistent, and it also makes Horde Pillager a little bit easier to activate too. So between all of these, we're always going to have a Bogspine Knuckles. We're always going to be evolving. Now for the next Shaman deck, we're going to kind of flip it around a little bit and go a little bit more on the control side of things. This is going to be an Old God Shaman. This deck utilizes not one Old God, not 2, but 3 Old Gods. I tried to make N'Zoth fit in here, but it just felt kind of awkward. But all 3 of these Old Gods just naturally fit pretty well in a control Shaman shell. So Cthulhu the Shattered naturally fits well when you want to go ahead and draw through your entire deck. Well, we do that in a control deck, but instead of going to Fatigue or instead of playing Elysiana, we're just going to drop a big Cthulhu. We also have Yogg-Saron because naturally we're playing a ton of spells, and Yogg-Saron is best played when you're behind because most of the options are either like stealing minions or clearing their minions or playing like the Rod of Roasting or getting spells. And lastly of the Old Gods, we have the Yasha Raj because he's just insane value. You play a couple of strongmen throughout the game, you play a couple of dunk tanks, and all of a sudden he's a huge swing turn and can just win games by himself. And speaking of strongmen, we also have a couple of those copies in here as well because it can provide some pretty crazy swing turns. When you want to clear the board with a tidal wave, you heal it back up to full health and then you drop a free 6/6 taunt. Or you can go ahead and play your Walking Fountain, clear a couple of dudes, heal up, and then play a 6/6 taunt. Also being able to play the Strongman alongside your Yogg-Saron is no joke as well. All right, so the next class up is going to be a Mage. This one is going to be a Secret Mage. This is one of the archetypes that the Hearthstone team was really pushing for this expansion, so we have a ton of support for it. And it's really nice to have a deck finally that you can win with cards that start in your deck and you don't have to generate a million things to win. So Secret Mage basically just got every kind of support option to help make this archetype really work. So we have the Game Master, which helps cheat out your secrets a little bit easier. We also got a development option with the Occult Conjurer, which helps us be a little bit more proactive with our secrets rather than just reactive all the time. And speaking of proactive, we also got the Inconspicuous Rider, which I talked about before, which is absolutely insane. Not only do you get a free 2/2, but it also thins your deck as well. And then we also have a ton of card draw. So we have the Rigged Fair game, which is drawing 3 cards. And especially with how many secrets we have in the deck, it's going to be pretty hard to always play around this card. So it's basically 3 mana, draw 3. And then we also have the Sage Seer of Darkmoon. So with how many secrets that we're always cheating out on the battlefield or playing, this guy can potentially draw us a full hand. Now what's especially cool about this version that I came up with is we use the Lorekeeper Polkelt. So once we've played a few secrets, we Polkelt, which automatically finds us the Sage, and then that Sage will then draw us into some very powerful turns. So we can draw it into some Burst with the Cloud Princes, we can draw into some Development with the Occult Conjurers, and then we can go ahead and finish them off with a Fireball. And the grand finale for Mage is going to be a grand finale Elemental Mage. This one I was super excited about because I personally love elementals. The new Confection Cyclone single-handedly can activate so many elemental synergies. So with this one card, back-to-back turns, you can go ahead and activate your elemental allies. You can go ahead and play this card right before turn 7 to activate your animated avalanche. You can hold on to some of these elementals to play them right before turn 8 into a grand finale. The ideal curve here is just to go ahead and play an elemental on turn 6 or hold on to like one of these sugar elementals to play. And then go ahead and follow that up with an animated avalanche. You get 2 7/6s. And then on the following turn, you follow that up with a grand finale, so you get 2 8/8s. And if that wasn't enough, we even have a Yogg Saron in here. Because we are generating a lot of spells here, we have a Mana Cyclone, which not only fits the elemental theme, but also gives us more spells to our hand. And then we have the amazing generators of Wandmaker and Cobalt Spellkin. And we do want to be generating some spells because that really helps make use of Mana Cyclone and the Mana Giants. So the spell generation and the elementals, they just kind of synergize perfectly together. Now on to Warlock. The first one I have for you guys is going to be a Demon Zoolock. This is a super hyper aggressive deck that tops out at just 3 mana because we have the new Revenant Rascal, which goes ahead and destroys a mana crystal for each player. Now, that benefits us more than our opponent because we don't really need mana. We have so many cheat guys, and we can go ahead and kind of cheat mana with our Dark Glare that mana is a little bit less relevant to us than our opponent, where they really need like 5 or 6 or 7 mana for a board clear. And because we are running so many cheap things, we can utilize another brand new card here, the Wicked Whispers, which we discard something cheap, which we don't really care about, and that'll buff up our board by +1/+1, so we can push a ton of damage. A couple of other new demons that just work really well in here are going to be Midway Maniac and the Minari Mosher. And they're both demons, so we can go ahead and synergize them with like a Candrathite Ebenlock. And this next one is going to be one of my favorites. I don't know if it'll be one of the best, but I know a lot of you guys are excited about it because it uses the new Ticketus. This is going to be a control Yasharaj or Ticketus Warlock. Now Ticketus is kind of a tough card to build around himself, because you don't want to be running that in like a deck of chaos because, well, his stats are better than his mana. And you don't want to be running just only demons because then that really limits yourself with the rest of your deck. So I went ahead and put him into a control Warlock to help mill some of our opponent's combo pieces to make our life a lot easier. But one sweet combo that we can do with Ticketus and Yasharaj is once Ticketus is corrupted and we play him, we can go ahead and use Expired Merchant to discard our Yasharaj, so now all of a sudden we have 2 of them. So in addition to our couple of Strongmen and our Cascading Disaster, not only is that first Yasharaj going to be a massive swing turn and value bomb, but once we play the second Yasharaj, we get double all of those corrupted copies back to our hand because we've played all of those twice. So now all of a sudden we get 4 Strongmen, we get 2 Cascading Disasters, and we get 2 Ticketus. And to get there, we are using a Soul Fragment package because it does heal us up and it generates some kind of removal for us as we go along. And we do have a free admission card in here because we have mostly demons, like with the new Fire Breather. We have Ticketus or the Circus Amalgams to help us with a slight dragon package for the Nether Breaths. The free admission could potentially draw us a Ticketus and discount that, and that's going to be a whole lot easier for us to corrupt. Next up on the list is going to be a Shuffle Death Rattle Rogue. So with this deck, we have an insane late game with Anka, and that discounts us like a Scrapyard Colossus and Kartut Defenders. And then once they're discounted, we can either rush them into our opponent with a Broom for some crazy swing turns, or we can go ahead and utilize those discounted minions and combo that with like a Shadow of Death and more copies into our deck with the Shadow of Death and with the new Ticketmaster card makes our Malevolent Strike a lot more discounted. Now, to help us get to that powerful late game, we have a couple of new really good early game cards here. So we have the Foxy Fraud, which is absolutely insane. This card I think is going to be ubiquitous among all rogue decks because it just enables so many early game synergies like the Wand Thief, the Evil Miscreant, and the new Swindle card to help us thin our deck and draw very efficiently. And then once we have all these things shuffled into our deck, we do have the new Grand Empress Shek'Zara, which can go ahead and draw all of those pieces. So imagine we have 3 Scrapyard Colossi shuffled into our deck through the Shadow of Death. We can go ahead and pull all of them out at once with the Grand Empress Shek'Zara. And by each shadow getting pulled out of our deck, it does draw another card right after that. So you draw 3 cards and summon 3 Scrapyard Colossuses all at once. And this next rogue deck is going to be a fun one. I don't know if this will be very viable, but you can bet I'll be trying this one out in the first week. It's going to be a Cthulhu and Yogg rogue deck. So Cthulhu naturally fits into a rogue deck because we have Stowaway. And with pretty much every rogue deck, we do have the Foxy Fraud and we have the Swindle because that's just such a powerful early game combo. And then we also have the secret package in here as well for the Yogg Saron. Because if we start popping off with a Hanar and cast secret after secret after secret, we can go ahead and activate the Yogg Saron pretty easily. And just to make this deck even more explosive and to make it more effective, we have the Lorekeeper Polkelt. So we can go ahead and draw our Yogg Saron and, play it whenever it's active. And when we play the Polkelt, that'll draw us into our Flick, and then it'll start drawing us into our Cthulhu pieces. So once we play, a few more Cthulhu pieces, we can shuffle our Cthulhu into our deck once it's assembled, and then we can use Stowaway to pull the Cthulhu into our hands. Now, once we play the Cthulhu, or once we play the Yogg Saron, we can play them again and again and again. We have a couple of Shadow Steps, and we have the new Tenwu of the Red Smoke. So if you thought 1 Yogg Saron was scary enough, try facing 3 Yogg Sarons. First up for Warrior is going to be a Highlander N'Zoth or Menagerie Warrior. Warrior got a ton of pieces to allow the menagerie mechanics. We have a lot of mechs, dragons, pirates, elementals. We just have so many things that is very easy to go ahead and make a Highlander deck out of this. So with this deck, I kind of worked with N'Zoth and went backwards. So we used Dragon Queen Alexstrasza as a dragon. We also put Siamet in Highlander decks, which also acts as an elemental. We also are definitely going to put a Deathwing in here, which is another dragon. And then I figured we're not too far off from a complete Menagerie or N'Zoth warrior. So as far as the Murloc, I went ahead and used the Fishy Flyer. And you can even draw that from the new Stage Dive, which draws a Rush. We have the mech with the Claw Machine. We have a Beast with Armageddillo, which buffs up a lot of taunts in the deck. And from there, I just kind of filled it in with a couple of good cards for each tribe. But a couple of cards that make going Menagerie worth it is not just for the N'Zoth, but because we have the new Ringmaster's Baton. We could get a buffed up one with Corsair Cash. Otherwise, getting 3 buffs onto your entire hand is pretty strong. We also have Ringmaster Watley, which draws 3 cards for a 5-mana 3/5, which is absolutely insane refill. And this deck can just keep pumping out threat after threat after threat. All right, Metalheads, this next warrior deck is for you. We're going to be using an ETC God of Metal Galakrond warrior deck. ETC God of Metal fits so well into this deck because we do have the Scion of Ruins, and we do have a lot of ways of drawing quickly to find some cool combo pieces to use with ETC. So ETC doesn't really do anything by himself, so you really need to combo him with some pretty good cards. So some things you can do with this deck. You can go ahead and use ETC and Inner Rage it, copy it a couple times with the Bloodsworn Mercenaries, and then all you have to do is just attack into with a couple of minions to do some huge burst damage. For example, on turn 10, you play ETC, you Inner Rage it, play a couple of Bloodsworn Mercenaries onto it, and then you use the new mech Bumper Car to rush into a minion, and then use those 2 1/1 riders to also rush into stuff, and that's a total of 18 damage. We also do have the old school combo of like a buffed up Kor'kron Elite from Galakrond. You go ahead and Inner Rage that, and then Bloodsworn Mercenary for a bunch of damage. And then against aggro decks, we also have the defensive combo of playing some risky skippers with Armor Smiths and Bloodsworn Mercenaries that way. So we can not only be defensive, but also very aggressive with this deck. And we do have kind of a small Menagerie package in here because we can, and it's so good. Scion of Ruin counts as the dragon for the Ringmaster's Baton or for the Ringmaster Watley. And getting this guy buffed up is huge because it copies itself. And then we do have a couple of copies of Stage Dive, because if we do happen to draw a Scion of Ruin with Stage Dive, then we get the buffs on that even more so. So we can get some huge Sign of Ruins with this deck. And keeping with the theme of Menagerie, we have a Menagerie Highlander Paladin. So we have the Red Scale Dragon Tamer, which draws us a dragon. We have a Carousel Griffin, which is a good mech. We have Hammer of Naru, which gives us a really solid elemental. We have the new Lothraxion the Redeemed for the demon. And because we're a Highlander, we're running Siamat. And at the end of it all, we have a huge N'Zoth. This other new Paladin deck is going to be a Dude Paladin or a Silver Hand Recruit Paladin. Now we have a boatload of brand new synergies that make this archetype very viable. So we have the new legendary Lothraxion the Redeemed. A couple other brand new cards that we have that support this archetype. We have the Carnival Barker, which buffs all your little guys. We have the Balloon Merchant, which buffs all your little guys. And with this deck, we have a very aggressive start. So we're putting a lot of little dudes, but once we pass the mid game, we can turn our little dudes into big dudes. So we have some buffs like Blessing of Authority and Blessing of Kings. And past the mid game, we can actually start comboing some of our spells together to have some pretty good swing turns. So after we Lothraxion on turn 5, on turn 6, we can do a Carnival Barker plus a Day at the Fair. So that'll summon 5 2/3 minions with Divine Shield. So the first Demon Hunter deck is going to be a Healing Demon Hunter. Psych, it's going to be an OTK Demon Hunter. This one uses the new Il'gynoth card. So we don't use a whole ton of new cards in this one, and at first glance it looks kind of like a Soul Demon Hunter package. And the early game is very similar to that, but we build the deck quite differently to make sure that we can go ahead and get a consistent OTK with Il'gynoth. So firstly, the combo with him is you want to go ahead and play Il'gynoth. You want to have an Eldrachi Warblades equipped. You play a discounted Soul Shard Lapidary, a few Twin Slices, get your attack up to 15, smack him in the face for 15, heal for 15, but instead you deal another 15 to them. Now, because we are Demon Hunter and we are smacking them in the face as the game goes on, we don't usually need a true OTK. So just being able to get, 10 attack onto our weapon and then dealing 10 and then dealing 10 again is usually enough to close out the game. So to make the OTK even more consistent, we're going to be utilizing the Lorekeeper Polkelt. Polkelt puts the Skull of Gul'dan on top of our deck, and that'll draw us into Zai the Incredible and a couple of Soul Shard Lapidaries. So with those guys discounted, we can get a huge attack swing in with our lifesteal weapon. If we have already played a Warblades earlier in the game, our Skull of Gul'dan will go ahead and find us a Horde Pillager so we can get that re-equipped. We also have a Marrow Slicer on the top end of the curve with the Skull of Gul'dan. So if we don't have any Twin Slices in our hand yet, or if we want to go ahead and find some more damage, we can always go ahead and Marrow Slicer, and that reshuffles our deck before we want to go ahead and go for that OTK. And the second Demon Hunter deck for you guys is going to be a Outcast Aggro Demon Hunter. We have new cards like Redeemed Pariah and Line Hopper. Now these cards don't really do much if we're going to go ahead and play some big Outcast cards. So we're going to use very cheap Outcast cards like the Crimson Sigil Runner. We're going to be using stuff like I-Beam and Dreadlord's Bite. So with these cards, we can get some pretty quick buffs on our minions and start pushing a lot of face damage. We also have a couple other new cards that really help synergize with some aggressiveness. So we have the Acrobatics, which draws you 2 cards, and if you play both of them, then you draw 2 more. So naturally, the second part of this effect is going to be pretty hard if you have expensive stuff that you're drawing with this. We also have the new Stilt Stepper, which gains 4 attack if you're able to play the card that you draw. So naturally, you want to go ahead and get something cheap from this so you can go ahead and play it in the same turn. So this first Priest deck, you're either going to love me or hate me, but it's going to be a big Resurrect Priest. We just have some insane big things with this latest expansion to make this archetype viable. So we have the Gahun the Blood God, which gives us some much needed card draw and can provide some crazy swing turns. We also have a couple of other really big guys like the Blood of Gahun and Idol of Yasharaj. So with these guys, you want to have some pretty specific deck building to make sure that you're always getting something good off of these guys from your deck. So once we get to the late game, this deck is an absolute powerhouse. The problem with these decks are usually the early game, but we have a couple of ways to kind of get over the early game hump. We have the new Insight card, which draws us a minion and discounts it. So that way we can go ahead and start playing our big stuff cheaper. And then we also have Palm Reading to discover whatever card we need in the situation and to discount some of our other early game tools to help us get to that late game. But depending on who's playing this deck, it's either going to be really fun or really annoying. This next priest deck is definitely going to be fun though. This is going to be a Yogg Spell Priest. So this deck is kind of a combo deck because not only do we have a lot of these small spells that we're used to, but we have a couple of ways of discounting them to go ahead and fling a lot of spells in a single turn. We have the Nazmani Blood Weaver and the Palm Reading, which discounts all of our small stuff either into like 0 mana or 1 mana. So we can play a lot of stuff in one turn for our Sethic Veil Weaver, get an easier to activate Cabal Acolytes, and we can even go ahead and combo them with like a Gadgets and Auctioneer to go ahead and draw a ton of cards and hopefully find our Yogg even faster. And because we are having a ton of spells in hand at all times, we do have a couple of Fortune Tellers in here. So not only can we go ahead and do a lot of crazy shenanigans with our small spells, we can drop a huge Fortune Teller in the mid game. And then one card that I'm a little bit biased towards, but is pretty cool in this deck is the Banana Vendor. I mean, and naturally, me being a funky monkey, I kind of have to like it, right? But not only is this guy my cousin, but he actually synergizes really well because these 1-cost spells that you get from him, you can go ahead and discount or play on a Sethic Veil Weaver, or just go ahead and play with like a Cabal Acolyte, or just synergize with everything else in the deck. So that's all 20 decks I have for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed them and gave you some ideas on what to play for day 1 of Madness at the Darkmoon Faire. I'm also curious from you guys. Comment down below and tell me what are your favorite decks from this list, or if I missed any decks that you think are really good that I didn't cover, then go ahead and share that down below in the comment section as well. And if you enjoyed these decks and got some pretty good ideas, then hit that like button down below, as that helps out the YouTube algorithm a lot. And also, if you like off-meta decks, if you like deck building, well, this is the channel for you. Hit that subscribe button and ring that bell notification so you can get notified whenever I post a new off-meta deck for the new expansion. Stay funky, and I'll see you guys at the fair.